Trump's COVID diagnosis rocks the final stage of the presidential campaign. The White House says he has mild symptoms. The president and his wife are both isolating, with just weeks to go before America goes to the polls.
We have a president that is not only on the job, will remain on the job, and I'm optimistic that he'll have a very quick and speedy recovery.
Also tonight, emergency food parcels for hundreds of students with coronavirus at Northumbria University as cases spike. The SNP MP who broke the COVID laws is investigated by Scotland Yard as pressure mounts for her to quit her seat. And the billionaire brothers from Blackburn who just bought Asda.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. President Trump and the First Lady are self-isolating in the White House tonight after testing positive for coronavirus. Both the President and Melania Trump are experiencing mild symptoms, and Mr. Trump's Chief of Staff insisted he's still on the job and will remain on the job. Boris Johnson was among the world leaders wishing them a quick recovery. The president's been dismissive of the virus and derided his election rival Joe Biden over wearing masks during this week's presidential TV debate. And it's not clear what all this could mean for the campaign and the election itself, as our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports.
As Marine One touched down at the White House last night, several of the passengers aboard were wearing masks. But not the president. As he walked across the South Lawn, he looked weary, but not ill. Hours later, he announced via a tweet that both he and the First Lady had tested positive for the coronavirus, sending a country on the eve of an election into uncharted territory. The president's chief of staff has tried to steady nerves about the condition of the president and Melania.
They remain in good spirits. The president does have mild symptoms, and the American people can rest assured that we have a president that is not only on the job, will remain on the job, and I'm optimistic that he'll have a very quick and speedy recovery.
Many questions remain unanswered.
Will you regularly schedule an update?
Not least what happens if the president's condition deteriorates as Election Day approaches. It appears that he caught the virus from one of his closest advisors, Hope Hicks, seen here in the long coat on Tuesday. She's been travelling extensively with the president this week, and yesterday it was confirmed that she had tested positive. From the White House, while waiting for the test results, the president spoke to Fox News, saying he was especially vulnerable because of the outpouring of affection towards him.
You have to treat our people great. You can't just say, stay away, stay away. They come up to you. There's such love with what we've done for them, and there's such love, and you have to treat our people great. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'll get my test back either tonight or tomorrow morning, but I spent a lot of time with Hope, and so does the First Lady.
It was notable that on Tuesday night, minutes ahead of the acrimonious debate, Joe Biden's wife was wearing a mask. That was not true for the president's extended family. Only Melania was seen with a face covering.
And I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it.
And with deep irony during the debate, the president mocked Joe Biden for following recommended safety protocols.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
From the very beginning of the pandemic, the president has consistently underplayed the virus.
It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
And this is their new hoax.
Disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute.
And he's made outlandish suggestions about how best to treat it.
By injection inside or almost a cleaning.
Even yesterday, already infected with the virus, even if he didn't know it, he was telling Americans that COVID-19 was receding as a threat.
I just want to say that the end of the pandemic
is in sight, and next year will be one of the greatest years in the history of our country.
Everybody wore a mask and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives.
Joe Biden spent 90 minutes on that debate stage with the president, raising fears for his health. But the former vice president has today tested negative for COVID. Donald Trump's last campaign rally was on Wednesday in Minnesota. It seems likely now that such events will have to be abandoned.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Duluth.
A tumultuous and fraught election campaign will now be conducted largely online. And that assumes Donald Trump quickly recovers. If he doesn't, then Americans may go to the polls with an incapacitated president.
Well, Robert's in Washington for us tonight. What does this mean for the election, Robert? Because it's just weeks away.
Well, Charlene, we're expecting a medical update in the next few hours, so that might bring some clarity. Look, this is a truly kind of shocking event, the ultimate October surprise, if you like. But what it's not is a constitutional crisis. If this president becomes too ill to conduct his duties or fulfill his duties, then it's clear what happens. There are procedures and protocols in place. Section 3 of the 25th Amendment would be invoked, and that turns the presidential powers over to the Vice President, Mike Pence. If both of them become ill, for example, then the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, becomes acting president. So those sort of protocols are in place. For example, if the president went onto a ventilator, it's clear that is what would happen. But even if America is institutionally in a pretty stable place tonight, politically it feels much more febrile. It's not clear if this campaign goes ahead. It's not clear if the presidential debates go ahead. It's not clear how Americans will react to this. I mean, for example, will they feel sympathy, deep sympathy for a sick president, and might that change the outcome? Or will they look at his cavalier attitude over the last 6 months and actually become more critical of his conduct? So all of those tonight are legitimate questions, but there are precious few answers.
OK, Robert, thanks very much. Well, here across the UK, there's evidence that infections are increasing. The R rate, which shows how many others one infected person can spread it to, has crept up in the past week. The latest figures show that in the last 24-hour period, there have been 6,968 recorded cases, most of them in England. The average for the last week is 6,273 cases per day. That's 944 on last week's figure. There have been a total of 42,268 deaths in the UK, with a person tested positive for COVID within the previous 28 days. 66 new deaths have been recorded in the last 24 hours. The latest full picture for COVID patients in hospital comes from Wednesday, when there were 2,376 coronavirus patients being cared for, up by 760 compared to a week earlier. 341 of them were on a ventilator. And hundreds of students have tested positive for coronavirus at Northumbria University as cases spike in the northeast and the northwest of England. 770 students with the virus are self-isolating, along with any close contacts. But there was a word of optimism from the Prime Minister today, who said the government was doing everything it can to make this Christmas normal. Here's our health editor, Emily Morgan.
They are surely not the pictures any parent would want to see. Emergency rations for their children who've tested positive for coronavirus, but for 770 students isolating at Northumbria University, these boxes are coming their way.
How are you feeling?
Not too good. I've got a few of the symptoms.
Amber and Josh are in quarantine. They feel sad it's come to this.
I think it's ruined the experience. We don't get to see what it's like.
I've never been to a lecture before, and meeting your professor, seeing your friends, going out past 10 p.m.
Students have been back here for less than 2 weeks. The huge number of cases have been reported since their return. The university says it's doing all it can to support them.
When a student logs that they are either symptomatic or positive, we have a whole machine that moves into action. The first one is around their well-being. What do they need and how can we support them? And if students are in university accommodation, then we have a concierge service that allows them to, at our cost, purchase food and services.
The university outbreak reflects the national picture. New figures from Public Health England show cases are still rising dramatically in the North East. In the North West too, numbers are continuing to go up, although at a slightly slower pace now. The highest rise is in parts of Liverpool. New restrictions come into force here tomorrow. Households will no longer be able to mix indoors anywhere. It comes as government scientists raise the R value, the speed at which the virus spreads. The Prime Minister today warned nothing will change until that comes down.
Well, we keep all restrictions, whether in the North West or anywhere, under constant review. But the best way to get the R below 1 is if we can just follow that guidance, use our common sense, stop transmission between people. That's really what it's all about. Then together we can get this virus down, we can get the R down.
He also suggested they do everything to ensure families can enjoy Christmas.
We'll do everything we can, everything we can to make sure that Christmas for everybody is as normal as possible.
Christmas, though, is a long way off, and students here have more immediate concerns.
So COVID cases are still rising, but there was some call for a bit of optimism today.
Yes, there was. There are a number of reports out that suggest the speed at which the virus is spreading is actually slowing down. There was a report out yesterday from Imperial College. There's another one out today from the ONS, both of which point to the fact that, yes, the number of virus cases are still rising, but they are not rising as fast as they were a few weeks ago. Now, you might well ask, OK, so if that's the case, why is the R rate going up? One reason is that there is a time lag in some of the data used to calculate that R number. So, yes, the virus may have been spreading at that rate, but it may have been spreading at that rate a couple of weeks ago. So it would make sense for the virus to be slowing down because the rule of 6 might be taking an effect. And we'll only know how that and the other measures have any effect in the coming weeks.
OK, Emily, thank you. Scotland Yard is investigating MP Margaret Ferrier after she brought coronavirus to Parliament and travelled home to Scotland by train after testing positive. She was suspended from the SNP last night. Today, SNP leader and Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon called for her to resign, saying it was the worst breach imaginable of COVID laws. From Westminster, our political correspondent Libby Vina has the latest.
She will be a fantastic MP.
She was standing by her then, but no longer. Today, Nicola Sturgeon was putting as much distance between herself and Margaret Ferrier as she could.
Her actions were reckless, dangerous and completely indefensible. And I feel very angry on behalf of all of you. I've also spoken to her directly and made crystal clear to her that I think she should now resign as an MP.
But what about the impact on how others behave?
Why should anyone in the general public listen to what you've been saying when one of your own MPs has blatantly ignored all the advice you've been giving from that podium over the last 6 months?
But it's because I'm not prepared to have that undermined that I'm not going to stand here and, think up lots of weasel words to try to excuse the inexcusable conduct of a colleague.
Despite getting tested on Saturday after feeling unwell, Margaret Ferrier took the train to London on Monday, giving a speech in Parliament. That evening her test came back positive, but the next day she still travelled home to Glasgow by train, only informing her chief whip on Wednesday she had COVID and only telling the public yesterday. It's believed this was the moment the Speaker was informed. After investigating, one MP, Jim Shannon, seated in the back row near Margaret Ferrier, was told to self-isolate.
I'm angry, the public's angry. All these people have been put at risk because of self-indulgence. It's not acceptable and they should consider their position.
Having backed his own top aide, Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister swerved questions on her future.
As I recall, in that particular case, the Durham Constabulary were very firm that there was nothing that they wanted to do and no case to answer as far as they could see. But the general principle is is a good one, which is that everybody should obey the rules. And
she hasn't, so should she resign?
That's a matter for her conscience and for the party.
Time to go, say her constituents.
I'm very, very disappointed.
She should give up her seat immediately.
Because she could have spread it on to anybody.
Tonight, police confirmed they are investigating a potential breach of COVID rules. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Asda's back in British hands, what the deal could mean for consumers. And e-scooters revving up the path to become legal on our roads. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Supermarket giant Asda is back in British ownership after it was bought by two billionaire brothers from Blackburn. Mohsin and Zubair Issa led a consortium which has taken a majority £7 billion stake in the retailer. And it's a real rags to riches story. Their parents came to England from India back in the 1960s to work in the textile industry. Here's our business editor, Joel Hills.
They are the billionaire brothers from Blackburn who now own a significant chunk of one of the UK's largest supermarkets. Mohsin and Zubair Issa made their fortune buying petrol stations and attracting franchises to them. This was their first. They now own 400.
We feel that Asda's customer-centric philosophy.
The brothers weren't taking questions from journalists today, instead releasing a stage-managed video for staff and customers. And there are plenty of questions because the brothers have bought their majority stake in Asda along with a private equity company, TDR. The consortium promised to invest in Asda to keep the headquarters in Leeds, and they're holding on to the chief executive, for now at least.
This is about growing Asda. It's a good thing for our customers. We get out of bed every day at Asda to work out how to lower prices for our customers, and that's, we know, never more important for our customers than at the moment.
This is a massive step up for the Issa brothers. Asda employs 147,000 staff. It has 631 supermarkets, shops and petrol stations, and it made a very healthy £800 million profit in 2018. But Asda has lost a little of its sparkle of late. 10 years ago, it was the UK's second largest supermarket, accounting for 17% of grocery sales. Since then, it's not only been overtaken by Sainsbury's, but it's also lost ground to Aldi and Lidl, which together are now almost as popular. This deal values Asda at just under £7 billion. It's a sign of the times that the stock market value of Ocado is 3 times higher. The trend to online shopping has accelerated during lockdown. The Chancellor tweeted his approval of the Asda takeover, but British or not, what the new owners do next will be closely scrutinised.
I've been looking with great interest about how they move into convenience and also how they support British business. So they said today that they're going to support British farmers and British suppliers and make sure the supply chain for Asda's got more British producers in it, and I'll be looking out for that.
The US giant Walmart has been trying to find a buyer for Asda ever since the merger with Sainsbury's was blocked last year on competition grounds. Walmart has retained a stake in the business and keeps a seat on the board, but it will no longer be calling the shots. Joel Hills, ITV News.
44 sub-postmasters and mistresses have won a legal battle to overturn wrongful convictions following a computer scandal. The Post Office said today it won't oppose their appeals. Many say they have been wrongly accused of theft, fraud and false accounting after a new computing system was introduced 20 years ago. Many faced ruin and some were imprisoned. E-scooters have darted past another hurdle in becoming legal to use on our roads. Senior MPs found the electric machines could be an effective way to reduce car journeys and cut pollution. But they said they could be dangerous to pedestrians, so should be kept off pavements. Sejal Karia on the plans to give e-scooters the green light.
A greener way to get around, or a menace on our roads. Your view might depend on whether you're riding one or in the path of one. Now there are calls to take the brakes off e-scooters and legalise them on public roads. But not everyone's happy.
I've been hit 2 times by e-scooters and my guide dog has been hit once. All 3 times we were on a pavement.
Among them British Paralympic skiing champion John Dickinson Lilly, who's registered blind.
It's the way they're being ridden. It's because they're quiet, so you can't hear them, particularly if you're visually impaired, and the needs of disabled people are being ridden over roughshod.
Despite being widely used, actually privately owned e-scooters are banned in the UK, except on private land. But rent one in some parts of the country, like here in the West Midlands, as part of a government trial. And they are legal, but only on public roads, not pavements. For those selling them, these vehicles are part of a cleaner, greener and safer future, particularly during these times of COVID.
Air pollution is a problem. We saw over the lockdown that the air pollution dropped a huge amount, and it just made life in cities that much better for people, really.
The UK remains one of the last places in Europe where privately owned e-scooters are illegal, with Paris boasting one of the biggest markets. MPs on the Transport Committee believe embracing e-scooters is key if we are to regulate their use here. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
And a reminder of our main story tonight. President Trump and the First Lady are isolating in the White House tonight after testing positive for COVID-19. Both say they have mild symptoms that comes with just weeks left of the presidential election campaign. And Raggy will no doubt have more on the President's health when he's here with the later news, which is on at 10:20 tonight. But for me and the whole of the team, do enjoy your evening. Goodbye.